Hey everybody, this is Carlos. Thanks for joining us on today's show. Today we're going to be speaking with Thomas Cobb of Boa Addicts. We're going to talk about how he got involved in the Boa game, and we're also going to be talking about the VPI gene and discussing if it's getting too saturated in the hobby. Finally, we're going to be talking about how to set up your Boa collection for commercial success. Boa Rack Radio is on the air now. Welcome everybody to Boa Rack Radio. I'm your host, Carlos Rojas of Morphs Unlimited, and with me today I have my co-host, Thomas Cobb of Boa Addicts. What's up, brother? How's it going, man?
Good. How about yourself?
Good, man. Good. You know, just like we were talking right before the show started, getting the kids to bed, getting everything knocked out so that we would be able to spend a couple minutes chatting, dude. So,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, man. So for those who are not familiar with you, dude, maybe let's kind of get, right at it and start talking, from the beginning. So what kind of sparked your interest in reptiles, and then specifically, when did the boa thing start?
I've always had a kind of a natural affinity for just animals in general. Both of my grandmothers were biology professors, and my mom was a hepatologist, so predisposition for science. And at a young age, I guess maybe it's just inherent in my character, I've always been fascinated with them. I think one of my earliest memories is going back east and seeing my great-grandma in Connecticut. She lived in Hartford, and she had a big garden and a huge pond on the property, and my dad told me stories of snapping turtles and things like that. And I remember when I was like 7 years old, I caught a leopard frog. And this leopard frog was like the most fascinating thing to me. I was like some tiny kid, had no prior experience other than zoos. And I caught this little leopard frog and I brought it inside. Everyone's freaking out, like, oh my God, what are you doing? And I wanted to take it home. But, leopard frog on an airplane, 2,300 miles, wasn't going to pan out too well. And from there, I just had, I don't know, that was kind of like the start of it. My mom bought me my first boa constrictor in 1991. So I was born in 83, so I was like eight and a half years old.
That's hilarious, dude.
Yeah, a long time ago. I mean, I'm 36 now, so we're talking, 28 years ago. I got my first boa constrictor. And the pet store we actually got it at here locally in Utah is actually still in business. It's changed owners a couple times since then, but the namesake of the pet store was actually the owner at the time, the founder. He's who I got my original from. And I remember that snake like the back of my hand. Still 28 years ago, I still remember that snake. And I think that's actually one of the things that caused me to kind of get into one of my secondary professions in carpentry and building is I made him this massive plywood enclosure thinking I was super cool, had like a plexiglass front. I was doing this when I was like 10 years old.
Wow.
That was, I don't come from a family that's like kind of naturally inclined to build things, but I guess I was. So, yeah, started a long, long time ago. As I got older, my wants and needs changed. My interests didn't necessarily change, but additions came in. So I got big into cars and, race cars and things like that. So the reptile thing kind of pulled off. I gave my last boa that I had to my half sister, who coincidentally actually still has her. I think she's got to be close to 20 years old now, and she still has that snake. And coming back into the hobby, it was more of when I was in a life position to where I'd met my wife 2009, got married in 10, had my son in 10, and started a couple businesses, bought our first house, then sold out or rented that one out, bought our second one. Then I was like, hey, this seems like a good time to jump back in. And that was in 2013. So, I had a hiatus for a period of time, probably a good 8-10 years without keeping any reptiles just because, I was so busy doing other stuff.
Yeah. But, so when you jumped back into the hobby, did you research it first and then go specifically for a morph, or did you just kind of go out and, do what is super common in our world, which is kind of that initial impulse buy that kind of gets you re-addicted?
No. I'm a very research based person. It's just like inherent in my character. I was concurrently, when I got back into the hobby, I was going to school at the University of Utah for environmental and organismal biology and chemistry. So,
Oh, wow.
you know, I figure if you're going to do something, right, like you want to do it right. And I didn't I mean, I kind of jumped in the want, but I was trying my best at the time. I mean, this was back when forums were still more popular than any Facebook groups. So there was still a plethora of information you can just Google and find and read about, and then you see what morphs you like, what genetics make them up, so on and so forth. You approach, you know, at the time were the bigger breeders producing these potential morphs, and, you know, start to talk to them. And, you know, as we know, some of the bigger breeders are kind of a pain in the ass, and they think they're too cool, or they don't want to spend the time to, you know, in essence, like mentor you or teach you or kind of coddle you a little bit when you're a newbie. But you know, I was fortunate enough to find the morphs, at least at that time, that I was really enamored with, and kind of jump into it, you know, with my wife's blessing to a degree. Like, obviously, we didn't know it was going to grow into what it has. But, you know, I think that's just like a snake keeper's future, you know, like you get one, then you get 100. It's just the way it goes.
Yeah, honestly, dude, I think my daughter phrased it perfectly. She calls it like Pokemon syndrome.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like once you get one, like it's
you gotta
just
catch them
okay.
all,
I got to
man.
get the next one. I got to get every single one that there is. Yeah, my son's huge into Pokemon now, and it's the same thing. Like he sees one, and then he starts telling me about these other ones that I've never even heard of. And it's just the same thing with morphs. You know, like when you're first in the game, you're like, I don't even know what that is. So then you start Googling it, and you're like, oh yeah, that is pretty badass. I want that now too. So you add it to your list of wants. And so yeah, you know, it's I got into it in 2013, like mid-year, and started with a melamine rack. But I had that was my first, I guess 2012 is when I purchased the animals, and was my first season breeding, so 2012. And my first year producing was actually 2013. I went 4 for 4 on my first pairings ever getting back into it. Did a Moonglow times the Snow, did an Aztec times a Widow Peak VPI that Tracy produced. I did a double het St. Pierre blood, do a double het St. Pierre blood, or no, not double het. I guess it was a het blood. Yeah, pos het type 2, I think it was. And so I hit bloods in 13, and then I had my fourth pairing was a double het call snow to a Moonglow, and I hit that too. So I did 4 for 4 my first time ever trying to breed, which was pretty epic.
Yeah, no, for the folks listening to our podcast kind of for the first time, and maybe they're not as familiar with some of the intricacies and difficulties that are related to breeding boas. You know, when you're coming over from species such as ball pythons, where for the most part, you know, you can get them to go almost every single year, they don't appreciate really how difficult it is to get boas to go on a consistent basis. So kudos, man. You know,
Oh yeah,
takes a lot of dedication.
Definitely. Boas are different, you know, and obviously there's degrees of difficulty within boas.
Yeah.
You'll have your people who say, okay, well, central stuff is always easier, more prolific. Then you get into your Colombian-based morphs, or, you know, just Colombians in general, and they're the next level up. And then you get into your trues, your BCC stuff, and those are considered, you know, to be some of the more difficult. And a lot of that is just with their, you know, endemic natural environment. They all vary. And so if you could emulate their environment closely to what they see in nature, you have a better chance. And I think when people keep cross species or subspecies of boas, they're keeping them all very similar to like what the standard Colombian base is, but they're not necessarily modifying for that natural environment. So yeah, boas aren't for the faint of heart, man. It's thrilling and exciting, but it'll break your heart too.
Oh yeah, 100%, man. So let me ask you, when you were first getting started in the game, I know that was kind of the epic days of like Jeff Ronnie's, Boa Constrictor Forum, and we still had the King Snake forums going hard at that time. So who were your mentors initially when you started delving your toes into the world of boas?
You know, I think the first person that I would say stands out as someone who mentored me to a degree, but kind of showed me the way was actually Diem. She called me out on a forum on Boa Constrictor or what was his forum? BoaConstrictor.net or something like that.
Right.
Jeff Ronnie's forum. And because I went on there like, oh yeah, I got this, I got this, I got that, I got this. Because when I came in, I started going pretty hard and buying everything. And
Right.
she was like, no, you're gonna burn out and sell your shit. Don't be like the rest of these guys. And I'm like, no, that's not me. When I go hard. So he had called me out, and from there we became really, really good friends. And
And he started the Ferrari line, or was one of like the early adopters? Like,
didn't start it, but was one of the definite early adopters and believers of the Ferrari lineage. Still one of the best polygenic pastels out there.
for sure, 100%.
And surprisingly, I actually don't own any of it. But I mean, there's kind of rhyme to reason with that,
Right.
and we might get into that when we talk more about the combinations I'm working with.
Yeah, no, for sure. So, are you still working in carpentry? What are you doing for a living these days now,
Dude, I'm
outside of
hustler.
reptiles?
I'm a hustler, man. I'm a hustler,
I'm
baby.
with you. I'm with
Yeah, I'm a hustler. So I do general contracting work. We opened a couple restaurants this last year. I did all the GC work on that, and flip homes, remodels, buy pallets at auctions, sell stuff, breed snakes, sell snakes. Literally, I'm a jack of everything. I do it all.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. And I've noticed that. And then another thing I've noticed is a lot of times when I check out your social media, I know a lot of times your kids are getting involved with the hobby. So kind of talk to me about what it's been like kind of raising your kids within the hobby and how your wife kind of sees the hobby.
Uh, my kids are tremendously spoiled because I'm their dad, but they love it. Anything animal, anything bug, they'll see a black widow, they pick it up. They see a snake, they want to grab it. They see a lizard, they want to catch it. They see a grub, they want to dig it out of the ground and inspect it. It's definitely passed on from me to them, which is amazing. One thing I can say to people who are thinking of getting in the hobby, or at least increasing their presence as far as quantity of animals, breeding, money expenditure, things like that, is family first, always. I think that's one thing that when you start becoming semi-successful, or you become so what's a good word to use for it, like you become so engrossed in the hobby that other things start to fall to the wayside, either spending time with family, missing events, paying attention to the wife. All that's important. And so my first word of advice is your family first, always, over the snakes even. And my wife, she's been my number one supporter in the fact that the way she worded it is, she says, I know you'll never do anything that puts harm to our family or puts us at risk. And,
Right.
She has full faith in me that whatever I set out to do, I do. I can't say it hasn't caused strife. There were many years when I had to spend an inordinate amount of time taking care of stuff just because my setup isn't what it is today. And, it's taken 8 years of evolving how I care for the animals, the quality of the caging, the setup that I use, the facility that we built. We custom built everything for it, and it's streamlined my process so I could take care of my whole collection, in the course of around 2 hours a day, 7 days a week, 6-7 days a week. And when you're talking a collection my size, that's phenomenally low.
Yeah, no. So, speaking of your collection, so kind of give us a little bit of an overview of your business and kind of, what your primary focus is right now.
Well, it's always started out as a hobby. I kind of consider it more of a supportive hobby, because anything that would be considered like an income just goes directly back into it. But, currently I'm sitting at, around 1,000 square foot facility. We got another 7 racks on route right now, so I think we'll be sitting around 24, 25.
Now, is the
breeders.
facility located at your home, near your home? How's that
That's
work?
separate. That's
Okay,
separate.
cool, got it.
So it's leave work at work and bring stay at home type deal. But yeah, we custom built this facility about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I think
Right.
it was. Moved the collection, and last year was actually, numbers wise, wasn't my best producing year, but it was also our first year into that facility. And stabilizing temperatures, humidities, racks, hot spots, everything changes than when you have it in your basement. And, I had it in my basement for like 6 years.
Right.
And so, it was a new endeavor to try and dial it in, but we got to figure it out, at this point. From the business aspect of things, I think people kind of have this perception that it's get rich quick.
Right.
You put one snake with another snake, then you have 30 snakes and you sell them all for $5,000. And that's just really not how it works. Massive amount of initial startup and overhead cost to do it correctly if you want it as a business. I recommend that most people view it as a hobby. Even now, I still view it as a hobby. I go in there and I enjoy it every time I do. It's like my free time. Like I can just clear my head and, get out of all the other space of my life and just focus on the animals, clean them, fresh waters. That's like one of my favorite things, is because then that they're happy, they're good, and they're comfortable. And yeah, I mean, business wise, it's not for the faint of heart. Like I said before, they give you an immense amount of joy, but they can break your heart too. Because one thing I always try to explain to people when I try and mentor people is biology is fickle. It does not care about your feelings. It doesn't care how much money you have. It doesn't care what car you drive. It doesn't care who you're married to. It doesn't care what racks you have. It doesn't care what lineage of animals you have. Biology just does not care. So you could have the absolute best care in the world. You could have the best caging, the best water, the best feed, the best experience, and your best snake dies. And then you're like, oh my God, what do I do? What did I do wrong? Why did this happen to me? IBD, arena virus, sunshine virus, whatever, coronavirus, I don't know, And it's a reality that when you're dealing with live animals in a live animal based business, that unfortunate circumstances can arise biologically. And a lot of the time it can't necessarily be explained. The science is very limited comparative to that of like humans, right? And so even if you get pathologies and necropsies and things like that, you may never get a definitive answer. And, I think when people are viewing this as a business, they also need to come to terms with the fact that that is a guaranteed scenario. It is not a if, it is a when. It'll happen.
Right.
And obviously, the more you keep, the more odds you have of something negative happening, to an animal or two animals or three animals or what have you. And, as your numbers go up, just your odds of having a potential biological issue with the animals can go up as well, And so, I mean, business aspect wise, I think that's something that a lot of these new guys need to consider, is you can spend $3,000 on a snake and he dies a year and a half later and he never produces for you. And what do? You eat that $3,000. Just, it's the name of the game, it's the risk we take. So.
Right. So is there a particular size right now that you're looking to kind of build out number-wise with animals where you feel like you're going to be comfortable, or is it just kind of playing it by ear and seeing, what feels handleable?
It's all random, man. I mean, I would say in 2016, I had, I'm trying to think, my son was born, my youngest was born in 17. So I actually did so let me reverse. There's another aspect business-wise, and this kind of couples in with like wife and kids. You need to know when you need to take a step back. Massive growth, massive purchasing of animals, buying collections. Like I'm going to get 55 new animals this year. I'm going to quarantine and do all this, and then all of a sudden it turns into 100, and then 200, and then you're like, I'm overwhelmed. Real life work is killing me. I need to pay attention to my family, my kids, my wife. I have other responsibilities. One of the biggest things that people need to realize is they need to know when to step back. And I'm not talking like step out. I'm just talking step back. Like slow your roll a little bit. Success comes, it's like team slow grow, team no sleep. Like there's a reasons why I've started to say these like little hashtags, because when you go too quick, you get burned out. And so there's been 3 instances since 2012 that I've kind of had a burnout moment where I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? It's too much. I got too much going on. I'm trying to build this, remodel this, house this, kids that, wife this, work this. I mean, problem this. It's just, it's one thing after another. And if you can't find that equilibrium between all aspects, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Then the quality of care that the animals are getting goes down, or the quality of care that your family's getting goes down. You know, it's a tit for tat. You have to sacrifice one thing for another. So I've had 2 instances where I pulled back kind of due to being burnt out. And then my last pullback in 17 was actually because my son was going to be born and I had to leave the country for 2.5 months.
Yeah, I think I recall that. Yep.
It was one of those instances where I couldn't relegate, 300 animals to my mom to take care of. And, it was just too much for her, as much as she wants to help. At the time she was 68, 69 years old. And it's just too much, And so, comfortability wise, number wise, I feel like I could comfortably handle like 600 without issue.
Wow.
I'm sitting current about 400 right now.
Okay.
I spend about 2 hours a day. That's it. And, it's repetition. It's just getting used to the process, the way I clean, the cages, the aspen, the windows on the caging, the flooring in the facility, shop vac, and chlorhexidine. It's all just second nature now. So when I'm in there, it's like autopilot, And,
well, I'm sure that doing it in a facility makes it a lot easier for you. This way you can kind of focus on it. You don't get distracted by kind of outside influences.
Oh, 100%. Being able to kind of separate, and that's why I said it was like separate the home from like the physical work of taking care of the animals. I don't have to necessarily worry about like, oh, I got a kid running by behind me and a snake's smacking its face on the cage or something like that. I'm there by myself and doing my thing. I have like a scenario where I'll say I have racks 1 through 20. Well, I'll hit like racks 1 through 6 and I'll bang those out. I can do a Freedom Breeder 1575, so 15 levels high and 5 tubs across, 75 total. I could hit that whole thing for like neonate to yearling boas in 50 minutes.
Yeah.
And so, I'll go through 70 to 75 snakes in 50 minutes on that. When I get to like the 0824s, which is the FB80 size, or FB70, it's FB80, from Freedom Breeder, there's 24 subadults to adult males in that rack, and I can do that whole thing in under 30 minutes. I'm about a minute a snake. And
damn,
so,
You're a machine.
Yeah, of course, and this is just like general quick maintenance, like doing water bowls, spot cleaning the windows, making sure the snakes are good. If I need to do like full cleans, that's when it gets really intensive. And, my cleaning process is probably one of the most strict that, anyone would find. And so when I'm in like full clean beast mode, it takes me like days and days and days. But that's like a couple times a year. I don't need to go too crazy because I keep up on the maintenance so much on a daily basis. I look at every snake every single day. So I can see when one defecates and I'll hit it right then. I don't put it off till tomorrow because I think, one of my favorite sayings is don't put off till tomorrow what you can do today. So if you see a snake needs something today, just hit it real quick and be done with it and you're good tomorrow,
Yeah, no, for sure. Now let's talk about maybe some of the lessons learned that you've kind of, learned kind of throughout the way, and we've hit on a couple of these already. But what are some of the things that you wish you knew when you first started in the hobby that you would want to pass on to the folks listening?
Honestly, patience. I think I came into this gung ho and pedal to the metal style, and I was met with immediate success, which is very abnormal, I would say, especially producing like my very first litter ever was Moonglow times Snow call line.
Right.
So it was like a whole litter of Moonglows and Snows, my very first one ever. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is easy, man. This is freaking going to be awesome. They're like at the time they were like 15 or $1,800 a piece, Yeah. And I'm like, but then guess what? Only one of that entire litter survived because there's an old adage that I had heard years ago was it's not a call litter until one of them dies. Call strain stuff just it's not my thing. But I was met with immediate success, and then I was immediately kicked in the nuts and like, hey, this isn't as easy as you think. And then I had 3 more litters, and so I was kind of like evened out. I was like, oh yeah, it's still cool, But I'd say patience. People need to be patient. They need to understand that going fast, chasing this idea of like world's first, Smorphs is what because I'm a troll, everybody knows, I'm always like Smorphs, world's first. Like no one gives a shit about world's first, dude. Like raise the snakes right, make them healthy, do quality genetics, and make the stuff that you enjoy. That's the other thing, is do what you want. Don't do what other people say or what other people think is cool. Like, you might like Call Sunglows. They're not my personal favorite. If I like VPI stuff, cool. We can be different, but we still enjoy the species. You know what I mean? So, do what you like. Do what makes you happy. If you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
Yeah,
And
no,
so,
and I think you hit on something that's actually really, really important. We see a lot of people coming over kind of from the ball python industry, coming into the boa industry as they're looking to expand. And obviously within the boa industry, they see a lot of the things that they are familiar with within ball pythons, right? They see the different morphs, they see the ability to kind of produce. They do see obviously that there's a marketplace associated with it that tends to, be relatively healthy. But when they end up coming back or coming into our industry, one of the things that they do is they tend to chase what's out there instead of really focusing on quality. And that's one of the things that I've noticed that a lot of folks have had a hard time understanding, is that they don't understand why within the boa industry and within the boa game, we're more willing to pay more for quality than maybe what they've experienced in the past, right?
oh, 100%, 100%. I mean, it just harkens back to the idea of like quality produces quality, and more often than not, that is the case. And so, of course, you're going to have casual keepers. Their goal is, well, I just want to make some snakes. They don't need to be top tier, craziest morph out there, combination, new this, new that. Like, they just want to breed. That's cool. And if your goal is to produce the top tier stuff, at least in your mind too, because what I consider top tier might not be to someone else, but that's just independent, right? As long as I'm happy with what I'm producing quality wise, I think that that's what matters. There definitely is a standard, and I call it levels, in the game, where obviously there are going to be nicer quality animals or certain attributes or lineages that hold more weight. And I think what you see a lot in ball pythons is you could have a spider ball python from 15 different people, and none of them look markedly different from the other quality wise. It's just a spider ball python. So when you have these ball python guys come in to boas, it's kind of like, well, let's grow them quick and breed them fast and produce, and there's no real thought to like longevity of the quality lineage, and it's like refinement, going back to like Ferraris and these old school style polygenic traits. Ferrari being one of the older ones, Jeff Ronnie's Pastel Dream lineage being one of the older ones. We have these lineages that there's a reason there's a lineage. And I think one of the big difficulty is you'll have an individual get one of these nice animals and then they polish a turd with it. And
Right.
so they took an animal that was exceptional and reduced its quality because they want to breed it quickly, instead of finding the correct counterpart that can complement the quality. And I think that people are quick to spend money on one and then not spend money on the second because they want to produce quicker. Of course, I think as it becomes more common knowledge and more accepted, the quality is, reigns supreme. I've seen a transition in people to where really even your casual keepers are really starting to focus more on what is the quality of the animal that I'm getting, versus like, I just want whatever I can get and pair it and make babies,
Right.
and that's good. We're seeing a change in the industry that's really focusing on quality, and what that'll do, in and of itself, is it'll increase the quality exponentially over the next 10 years, let's say. And then what is considered like the top tier now might be like the mid grade then, because everything hopefully will continue to get better.
Yeah, no, 100%, man. And I think we're seeing a lot of that, especially with some of the lines of VPI.
Definitely.
I noticed like Red Panthers seem every year to get significantly better overall within the industry itself, right? So I think you're 100% sure, 100% on point with that. So let's talk about like the 2016 issue that you ended up having. So maybe kind of give our listeners a little bit of background about what ended up happening, and then how that kind of made you kind of evaluate the hobby, and how you pivoted to keep yourself successful.
So that was actually in 13.
Oh, in 13,
Happened.
sorry.
Yeah, happened in 13. And yeah, so long story short is I had these new ARS big boa racks that I just had delivered, and they come with the big Vision boa tub, big massive
Right.
opaque looking tub. It looks like a grow tub, right? And so
Yeah,
I
I
was out.
literally have one right next to me
It
as you're
literally
telling me
looks
this.
like a grow tub, like you're gonna
Yeah.
do like some hydroponic stuff. And I had them in my front yard because in transit and delivery, of course, there's going to be grime and debris and whatever, environmental impact on the equipment itself. So it's like instead of just putting an animal directly in it, you want to clean it. Well, I thought to myself, well, what's the easiest way to clean it? I'll take it outside and do it in my driveway. So
Right.
I had I want to say 28 of these Vision boa tubs on my driveway, and a nosy stay-at-home mom neighbor decided to, stick her nose where it quite didn't belong,
Oh Lord.
and she called the authorities saying that I was growing marijuana in my basement. Yeah, it was glorious. I'll tell you, that was
And
that was a
especially in a
fun.
state like Utah, man, that just makes
Yeah,
it that much
yeah.
more funny.
Well, and see, that's the thing is, I mean, we stereotypes are there for a reason. We do have a lot of stay-at-home moms here who
Yeah.
really have nothing better to do, than pay attention to what their neighbor's doing. So the police show up, they knock on my door, I open it. I'm just like a normal dude. I own a frozen yogurt store. Like I'm just like totally chill. They're like, hey, are you Tom? I'm like, yeah. What's going on? They're like, okay, can we talk to you for a minute? I'm like, sure, why not? So I let him in, which was my first mistake.
Right.
By the way, to all the listeners, don't let the cops in. Tell them to go get a warrant. Secondly, they're like, well, what are you growing in your basement? I look at them quizzically. I'm like, what am I growing in my basement? What do you mean, what am I growing in my basement? They're like, well, your neighbors called and said you have something in your basement. I'm like, oh, my boas? Do you want to go see them? And they're like, yeah, that's cool. I had boa file racks, and I had these new ARS racks that I was just setting up. And so, the police come down. They're like, oh, yeah, this is like legit, and I custom built the room when we finished the basement. So I had already like planned for this. This was just 1 year after I had got back in, and we had already custom built a room, with greenback drywall, completely heat controlled, temp controlled, humidity controlled, yada yada. And so we take them down there, and they're like, oh yeah, this is cool. I guess they report back to the ordinance enforcement, who then contacts me and says, well, they want to inspect it. So they come and inspect it, and they're like, all right, well, we don't see why this is such a big issue. But my neighbor pressed it, and because she pressed it, more authorities got involved. They came and knocked on my door 3 days after initial meeting, saying that I didn't have an exotic animal permit. So I'm like, all right, cool. Well, I'll go get one happily. So I go down to the city, and I go to the licensing office, and I say, hey, can I get an application for an exotic animal permit? And the woman looks at me and says, we don't have an application for that. I'm like, but I've been instructed that I need to get this permit. How am I supposed to apply for it? And she looks at me dumbfounded, and she says, we've never had anybody apply. So I was the very first person in the history of the city to ever even request for a permit. And so that's the thing is, ignorance isn't necessarily bliss, but I had no idea that was even a thing,
Yeah.
And so from there, they're like, okay, well, we don't have an application for you. Like they didn't even have one drafted. They couldn't even pull this up in their ordinance list or anything. They're like, well, we can't give you an application, so you can't apply for a permit. I'm like, all right, well, let's talk to the city manager and see if we can get a permit drafted through the attorney. And 2 days later, they call and said, we're going to refuse you a permit application because you're going to be cited. And I'm like, what am I going to be cited for? They're like, for not having an exotic animal permit. I'm like, how the hell can I not? I can't even get an exotic animal permit, but now you're going to cite me 2 days after I request.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, this was just back and forth, and we were just like, oh my hell, this is a mess. And so, I was fortunate enough that I had the entire community on my side, honestly. It blew up because
I think I remember hearing it like on Urban Jungles radio, I think.
Yeah. I did an interview with Danny, who's a buddy of mine on Urban, and, it turned into an absolute shit show, literally. We had a online international petition with, I think it ended up around 5,000 international and local, continental signatures everywhere from Malta to Paris to the Maldives to the Caribbean, you know, of people saying, like, leave this dude alone. Like, what are you guys tripping about? So then the news caught hold of it. I did interviews with Associated Press, Fox News, Channel 2, like KSL, all these news stations. You know, I had journalists coming out and doing interviews, and it went international. And so at that point, we're like, okay, this is a big deal. The city said that they were going to change the ordinance, stating that you could only have one exotic animal, and you needed to have a permit for it, because the ordinance read that you needed to have an exotic animal permit for an exotic animal.
Did it associate any number with that permit?
It did not associate any number. So the ambiguity in that is actually what saved us as a hobby in the city. Because of that ambiguity, they couldn't say that, well, you can only have one. Because they came back to me at the time, I had 27. And they said, well, you can only have one. I'm like, but your ordinance doesn't state I can only have one. They're like, but it does. And I was like, depending on how you read that ordinance and interpret it. Right. So there was you know, if you go to court, there was no way to prove that ordinance stated one. And so we had several different ordinances from the city that designate quantity. So like quantity of dogs allowed, quantity of pigeons allowed, quantity of apiary bins for beekeeping allowed. So they were posting all these quantities for specific species or specific animals, but they didn't do it in reference to exotics. And so we got them on that point, which they couldn't refute. So I was able, you know, I was given a stay of relief in essence, to where they're like, all right, well, until we figure this out, you don't have to move your animals, which was, you know, a very important aspect of the fight. At which point, Phil Goss, a friend of mine from the wonderful organization, United States Association of Reptile Keepers, USARC, the #1 reptile organization for our rights, he hits me up and says, hey, I'm coming out to Utah and we're going to deal with this. So Phil Goss himself flew out here, and we had dozens of people going to every town meeting. You know, there were a lot of proponents and a lot of opponents. So we had a battle for sure. And in the end, you know, the city came back saying, well, we're going to change the ordinance to where people can only have one exotic animal. And we were able to get them to pull back on that and say that you can have up to 25 on a permit. And if you're going to breed, you can have up to 50 offspring at any given time. So a total of 75. So we went from 1, which is what the city was fighting for, to 75, and I call that a win in our book for sure. Because this is precedent setting. You know, if this had gone through, especially at the time with the Lacey Act violations and things that was going on with the retics and berms and anacondas and potentially boa constrictors at that time, you know, when all that Lacey Act stuff was going on, you know, this had pretty big implications if a law had been passed stating that you only had to have one, or you only could have one. And the way they defined exotic animals, they say an exotic animal whose indigenous habitat is not within the continental U.S. But, you know, we had some arguments there, you know, in law jargon. Well, what are we talking about when you're talking about indigenous habitat? Are you talking to rainforest habitat? Well, I could argue that the Deer Creek Estates down in Florida has an active living boa population down there, boa constrictor imperators. I believe they're imperators. And so, you know, it's one of those things where, while I could argue on that point, the United States does have a natural population. So are you going to deem these exotic? Another point was, well, you're going to term exotics by anything whose habitat is not indigenous. Well, what about a hamster? Hamsters are from Syria.
Yeah, and that's the first thing I thought about when you just said that.
What about a bearded dragon from Australia? What about a chameleon? You know, like there's all of these very common species that are kept all across the state. And especially, you know, also within that city, how are you going to enforce that? And, you know, their statement to me was, well, we'll only enforce it when we're notified. And so, in essence, they were wanting people to rat on other people, saying, hey, look, little Bobby has a hamster. Go give him a ticket because he doesn't have a permit. And I was like, you know, you can't do selective enforcement. Law is law. You know, everybody has to abide by the law. So either one person does or nobody does. You know what I mean? Like, you can't just target a single individual. And when you do, I mean, it's just like targeting that you see, you know, with law enforcement doing it all across the country over dumb things. You can't just target a single person. You know, if you're going to enforce something, enforce it equally. Right. So, I mean, in the end, you know, I learned a tremendous amount. It was probably one of the most difficult times in our short life, you know, being a married couple, 2 young children. I had like a 3-year-old and 1.5-year-old. I mean, very stressful inducing, but we made it through, and, you know, we set a precedent for the hobby. You don't retaliate and act retarded and do crazy stuff and represent the hobby in a respectable manner, articulate, think about what you're doing, educate yourself, research it, and, lean on the people around you that can buffer maybe something that you're falling short on or can give you better advice, and we have great outlets for that. Again, like you said, we have phenomenal outlets there, and, they have attorneys on the books. Phil Goss is amazingly educated, in regards to this stuff, and they're there for our rights. And so, when they were trying to impose on what I felt was my natural right to the pursuit of happiness, and that was another one of my arguments, it worked out in the end, and I gained a lot of notoriety for it. I think I garnered some respect within the industry. At least I hope so, because I try to represent everybody in a good manner. Not all reptile keepers are nuts. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm not a nut, but I mean, I'm not like one of those crazy nuts,
Yeah, just slightly nutty.
Yeah, just slightly.
So speaking of slightly nutty, talk about the Team No Sleep background and kind of where that came from.
You ever been married to a Chinese woman?
I have not, but I am married to a half Filipino woman.
Oh yes, you kind of get it.
I kind of get it, dude. I kind of get it, brother.
Yeah, I have been molded in a good manner. Team No Sleep really comes about it really came about with the snakes, I think, honestly, because instead of doing snakes during the day, when my kids are awake and when my wife is awake and when I can have present family time, I go and I do it while they're sleeping, because then I don't need to abut the snake time that I need to take care of the animals against family time. I can focus on the family as much as I needed and focus on work. And then, I mean, it's a detriment, I don't sleep very much. I went to bed at 4 a.m. yesterday, woke up at 7:50 today. Day before that, I went to bed at, well, surprisingly, because I forgot it was daylight savings, I went to bed at 3:45 in the morning. I was up at 7:50 again. Day before that, I went to bed at 3 in the morning. I was up at 8. Day before that, I went to bed at 2. I was up at 7:10. So
well, I think it's pretty notorious, man, that within all the guys that I know within the industry, you're probably one of the dudes that hustles the hardest. And I know, for example, if I bust open my Facebook, I can usually expect to see you on there, kind of, still being active, showing that you're still around. So
yeah, well, that's actually one of my favorite things to do, is to help people. Like a lot of people have a mixed idea of the type of person I am, but some of that comes just with the perception that I'm conceited, I guess. But I mean, it's all in jest. I'm more of a joker than anything. If you need legitimate help, I'm more than willing to help, and answer questions. Of course, if it's something that you can just research. I mean, I might tell you, hey, here's a source.
You might slightly troll.
well, I just tell them, go read about it first. If you have a legit question after you've researched it, then hit me back and I'll help you out. But I mean, the trolling side of things, it's more of just fun. I don't try and truly offend people. I mean, sometimes, if they're
sometimes people get a little bit sensitive, though, dude. Let's be honest here.
Right. Like John Reyes, man. I love to troll that guy.
Yeah. So let's talk about what's going on with your season, man. Talk about some of the pairings that you're doing, some of the things that you're hoping to produce.
Oh, well, I'm hoping that I could hit my first season of Labyrinths.
Wow.
Yeah. I was one of the first, if not the first person to invest in the project. And unfortunately, up until now, we haven't had very much luck with it. But this year, my 15 male finally put in work. So I'm hoping that I can hit, I guess the best out of that pairing would be a Hypojungle Labyrinth, 100% het sharp snow. So that would be pretty cool. From there,
has anybody really worked the labby into the sharp gene? We see a lot of the work into the VPI thus far.
Jeff has it into sharp. The original pair that I bought a 1/1 2013 pair from his first litter from Carlos that were Paws het sharp. Unfortunately, both those animals, for some reason passed away. And, we did pathologies and necropsies, and nothing ever came of it. Again, like I said, the heartbreak. You're just met with it sometimes. Labyrinth into sharp, I think, has been done, at least in the Posset form. I would say most people have gone the VPI route just because of the popularity of VPI. But with the sharp stuff, to me, it was... the sharp snow is actually my son's snake. And so it was his first... it was his first breeding, and I figured what better way than to throw a hypojungle labyrinth on it.
Right.
I mean, it's pretty good for an 8.5-year-old.
Heck yeah, it is.
Or
Man.
not, I guess he's 9.5 now. Yeah, 9.5. So, I think that'll be pretty cool. Labyrinth's a great project. It's very new, very infancy in its stages. And so I think we're going to see some real epic stuff pop out here in the next couple of years, that's going to really take it next level.
Awesome, man. So basically, how have you really set your collection up currently for commercial success? Kind of what's your feelings on that?
Really, it just comes down to streamlining. I mean, time is money, right? So if anything you can do that expedites your ability to take care of the animals properly is worth its money. And so, one of my biggest things that I did is I transitioned. I started out with boa files and melamine racks.
Right.
I transitioned to like older style used freedom breeders in 2012 and 13, and I had those ARSs. And then at that point, I actually purchased Tony Famosat's full collection out of Cali Green Ant, very popular, founder of the Red Rum lineage, actually. So I bought his whole collection, and in doing so, I received a bunch of vision racks, and I've never been a fan of vision racks, so I sold them off, and I got some more freedom breeders. And that was in 13, so then in 14, I was like, all right, well, I mean, this is becoming something much more than what I had expected. So I hit up Freedom Breeder at the time and did my first order of new racks. And since then, I run all of the brand new Freedom Breeder stainless steel racks. The new tubs, I have 7 en route right now. They should be here maybe like next week. Injection molded tubs, I mean, best in the industry.
Oh, absolutely.
Stainless steels, antimicrobial, never rusts. Like, it's fantastic equipment. Jesse's a good friend of mine, Big shout out to Jesse at Freedom Breeder. Team sleep too much because he's not sending me my racks right now. He's always sleeping instead of welding because he's lazy. But yeah, I mean streamlining, finding out what setup works for you. I think one thing I learned too is don't do assholes to elbows. Like, you need room to move. You need room to maneuver around the animals. You need room to take care of everything properly. Cleanliness is next to godliness, man. Like, right. I see some of these people's collections, and I'm just like, what are you guys thinking? Like don't bare minimum. First off, they're alive, right? So take care of the animals. Second off, how do you get anything done? I mean, I have major OCD, so I have to keep it like in a very specific manner.
Right.
But cleanliness, and that'll yield greater success as well. Cleanliness. Also, don't view the animals as cash cow. They're sentient beings. They rely on you 100% for their care. So take care of them in the proper manner that you should take care of them. And now I'm not saying like go get primo water like me. I go to Walmart and I get all bottled water for the animals. I do 35 gallons a week on water changes. I'm not saying you need to do that. Like, if you don't want to be that crazy, because I am a little specific and anal, but definitely put in the time and the effort. Understand bad things happen. That's another aspect, like we've talked about. You need to understand that it won't always go your way, but be persistent and be patient and work hard and grind. I mean, put in the time. No one who's successful in this business hasn't put in the time to do it. Jeff, I think was his 35th season that he's been breeding boas.
At least
he's put in his time. A lot of these other big breeders, Big Mike, I think he's 21 years, basically boas, 20 plus years. A lot of these guys have paid their dues as far as time is concerned to become successful, and ride the waves. Markets go up, markets go down. Like, just carry that passion. Like, if you don't have the passion for it, if you're just viewing it as like a monetary outlet, quick cash, you're going to be out before you came in. And we've seen it time and again with people who come in, they throw big money down, and they're baller shot caller, and everyone's like, oh, new up and comer. 3 years later they're gone, because their motives weren't in the right place to begin with. And so that's kind of like the recipe for success. Support network. You need to have people around you that understand how much you care about it and support you. My number one support network first starts with my wife. Super patient, but she pushes me hard. if I want to go to bed at night, she'll be like, get up and go work on snakes. And then I think about it, well, she's right. Get up and go work on snakes, because then tomorrow I get that extra 2 hours of wrestling with the kids,
Right.
instead of working on snakes, you know? And, my mom, she's been tremendously helpful. And my dad, he hates snakes, like straight hates snakes. But no shit, I was in Taiwan for the birth of my son, and he was pulling babies out for me when I was like 17,000 miles away with my mom. Now, this was like a litter that you don't lose babies on. This was one of my Key West Motley Fire litters, right? This is at the time like when they weren't made, right? And they lost like 3 of them in my room. I'm like, oh my God. So I come home, they're like, we lost these babies. And so then, 2 years later, I have a leucistic litter. And actually, this was just last year. We had a hit another leucistic litter, and I was in California with the family. And my mom sends me pictures of these animals. I'm like, oh, sweet. And we had 3 leucistics in the litter. And I come back, and there's only 1 in the tub. I'm like, oh man. My God. So they do their best. They definitely are supportive, and because they're not as experienced or knowledgeable as me, I can't expect the same. I can't hold them that same expectation. But yeah, having a support network around you and people that believe in you too. No, I mean, they don't need to believe in your dream; they just need to believe in you. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, show me your friends, I'll show you your future. It goes with your family too. Whoever you keep close, that's who you're going to emulate the most.
No, that's absolute gold, man. That's nothing but awesome tips. So where do you see the future of the hobby moving to?
Epicness.
Epicness, yeah.
I mean, really, like that's what I see. And I don't care what anyone else is doing, honestly. Like when people look at my profile and it says everybody just wants to be liked and accepted, except for Tom. Tom doesn't give a shit. I really don't care what anyone else is doing. Like it's not my business to care what they're doing, right? It's their animals, their money. They can do what they want. And what I want to see is I want to see people push the envelope as far as quality. I want to see new combinations. I want to see quality of care go up. I want to see people enjoy what they do. I want to see camaraderie come back. That's I think one of the biggest things that we miss these days, and a lot of it's social media based. Right when I came in was kind of the dying, heaving breaths of what I consider like one of the most camaraderie based times in the hobby. And we lost a lot of integral people that kind of were viewed as the legends, to the hobby. And as far as popularity is concerned, maybe they weren't always making new morphs or coming up with new stuff, but they were just the happy people who are like, yeah, dude, let's make some cool stuff, And I mean, in the end, I think that people view it too much as a competition, and that's a detriment. I mean, competition's good, don't get me wrong, because it pushes the envelope of like people wanting to do better, right? But when it becomes negative, I think that's when we start losing like the real reason why we're doing it. We're all in the same hobby together because we love reptiles, right? And we don't need to be pot shotting people and doing like malicious shit on purpose just to be an asshole. Like trolling, I try and do it like in jest, and it's fun, and if people have a problem, they'll hit me up and I'll be like, no man, I'm just kidding with you, like for real. But like we see a lot of this inner fighting and this arguing and like these feuds that go on, and it doesn't do anybody any favors. So I mean, future wise, I like I said, the markets go up and down. I think that we have a bright future. Honestly, we have more combinations now than we ever have. We have more individual morphs than we ever have. We have some really hitting stuff that's going to be released, in the next couple years between the pied stuff and combinations within that pied gene, more fire combinations, leucistic combinations. See what can happen there. We have a lot to look forward to, I think.
Awesome, man. So now we're going to do something that we're going to do with everybody that's on the show, and I'm going to hit you with the dirty dozen, all right? So these are going to be 12 questions.
Sure.
Short answer. Just kind of give me your thoughts on each one of those, and let's knock it out, man. So number one, what's the size of your current collection?
Around 400.
Okay. Number two, frozen thawed or live?
Frozen thawed, unless I'm starting neonate boas. I do start neonates on live just because when you're having 150, 200 babies sitting there dangling a mouse for 20 minutes to try and
Right.
get one to eat is kind of a pain. There are proponents to doing frozen thawed from birth, and I understand some of the reasoning. I always go live, but usually by the third to fourth meal I transition to frozen thawed as much as I can, and I've only ever had to force feed one boa out of all of the
A
animals I've had them
gajillion.
produce.
Yeah.
And that was the first feed. They just would not take a mouse. But I force fed a frozen thawed, next one they took. So,
Awesome.
yeah, frozen thawed for sure.
All right. What's your favorite morph?
Red rum, well, I mean, it's not a morph, but it's, polygenic.
Yeah.
Red rum, dude.
Yeah,
Murder,
of
man.
course.
If I had to pick like an actual heritable morph, oh geez, that's tough. Honestly, I would say it's got to be jungle, dude. I love
Yeah.
jungle. I love jungle. It's the best additive morph out there. It does
100%,
so
man.
many cool things, and yeah, jungle for sure.
All right. What's the most overrated morph?
I knew you're gonna do that to me. Oh god, yeah, I'll get some shit for that. Oh, people are gonna expect it, so I'll just say it. That Kraken, dude. I can't get over the Kraken stuff. Crack-a-lackin'. I can't. A lot of it is the history behind the animal. I know Slavic, and I don't want a pot shot, right? Like, I respect Slavic. I call him Sexy Slav. He's a good friend of mine. He has them. He's explained to me in depth why he believes that they're a legitimate thing. I'm still not personally sold. I appreciate he's taking the time to at least break it down better than anyone else has. But it's kind of like that, the opaqueness or the fogginess surrounding the morph or supposed morph. The history behind it, I just can't get behind it. It's not definitive to me, and the way people will say they have it but can't explain what it is. Like, I mean, I got a lot of things, but I can't explain what they are. Well, it makes no damn sense if you can't explain it.
Right.
So yeah.
What's your favorite part of the hobby?
Cleaning snakes, dude. Cleaning
Oh my
snakes.
god, dude.
Yeah. Like they're happy, like
Yeah.
they're chill. Like you're being a good keeper. You're taking care of your business,
It's like your meditation, right?
Yeah, for real. I mean, when it's nutty, you go in there, you kick on your Alexa or whatever you got, whatever music you got, and you just jam out and get in your routine. If I had to choose something outside of my collection, favorite part of the hobby, I would think is the few friends, like true friends that you gain. I have a couple that I would consider like real friends outside of boas that are like ride or die style.
Yeah.
And namely John Wing Sauce. He flew out here, helped me on one of my houses that we were getting ready to sell, and I mean, dude's a ride or die friend. Like he's a brother, and
Yeah.
and I mean, the people can make it. It is what you make it with the people, but there are some people in here that really make it worth coming to.
Awesome. All right, number 7, or actually number 6. What's the worst part of the hobby?
Oh god, worst part of the hobby, mites, and the people that think that it's okay to send mites to people, and the people that think it's okay to inundate the animals with inordinate amounts of pesticides because they can't take care of their shit.
Yep.
It's that simple.
All right, number 7. Who are your favorite people in the hobby?
Oh god, favorite people. Shit, let me look at my chat. It's mostly the people that I view as like people that I could shoot the shit with. The people who I enjoy the most, like just talk to outside of snakes. Even John Reyes, he's a good buddy of mine. He's a cool guy. He's funny to joke around with and mess around with. There's a lot of them, honestly. Chad's cool, Matt's cool. Kyle, I love Kyle, honestly. Kyle's probably my singular favorite person in the game who's still in the game because
Right.
he is one of the most honest, laid back, just totally chill, just good, all around good people, and I've purchased more from him than I think anybody that I've ever bought from. And outside of that, I've been in his house, I've toured his collection, I've been over there multiple times, once a year at least. And he's just a good guy. So if I had to choose one person who's still actively in the hobby, Kyle by far. He's just an absolute phenomenal person.
All right, so number 8. What other species do you keep?
Children.
Children, there you go.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't keep any other species, honestly. I haven't kept anything outside of boas since, God, long time, man. I mean, 20 years. It's always been boas. Things I do want to get is I want to get some basin emeralds for sure. I want like a whole wall of basins. But if I'm going to do it, I'm going to go hard. Right. You know? Yeah. I want the big dollar, big boys. You know, I don't want the cheap ones. And 6,000 doesn't sound cheap, but that's a cheap basin. Yeah. You know, when you're looking at it. So basins are something I do want to do. I like the arboreal species. Chris Gilbert, he's another good friend of mine. He's trying to get me into all these like kind of unknown little connoisseur type species because he keeps all sorts of weird stuff and he's always talking shit saying that I need to too. So, you know, one day, once I feel like I'm comfortable enough moving into another species and maybe have enough space for the appropriate care, you know, I'm not going to just get a species and keep it like a boa if it's not supposed to be, you know?
Yeah, no, for sure, dude. So, number 9, what's one fact about you that most people who first meet you wouldn't guess?
Fact about me that most people wouldn't guess. I don't know, honestly. I mean, it's kind of weird, like doing it online, right? I think people's first perception of me is like, oh, he's a dick, you know, or he's an ass. But that I'm actually a nice guy. How about that? Because their first impression is that I'm probably an ass, but in reality, I'm like super chill. You know, and
that kind of leads us to the next one. What's like one common misconception do you think that kind of exists out there in the hobby?
Yeah, I guess that's probably the biggest misconception is that they think I'm a dick. The second biggest misconception is, you know, they think that this was all just given and not earned. Right. You know, people have this idea of like, oh well, so-and-so gave you money, or you took a loan out, or you did this, or your wife pays for everything, that type of thing. Well, first off, when you're married, you're a team, right? So anything you do is teamwork. Doesn't matter who's, right? Everything is for everybody. Secondly, doesn't matter what people do or how they get it, right? It's not your business. If I mean, that's just hater talk, you know what I mean? So, you know, the perception that what I have or what we do as a family over here and in the hobby isn't earned, I think that's a big misconception.
All right. 11. What makes you think, what's like the one thing that makes you say, what was I thinking when you look back at your time in the hobby?
You know, I used to think that more back in the day, I think. Now, I really just enjoy it, honestly. I think some of the people I've mentored, I look back and I'm like, oh, man, all the time spent trying to help you out and you still do the same dumb shit. But yeah, I mean, but that's the thing too, is I want people to look at me as someone who they can go to. You know, I don't want to be so considered so elitist that they're like, oh well, we can't even ask him a question. You know, like if you got something, I'll help you. You know, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't really think that, honestly. Not that's anymore. Awesome, I used to, but I mean, I'm in a good place now. You know, and our family's in a good place. Collection's in a good place. I mean, my headspace is good. So yeah, I mean, I don't think like what was I thinking? Hardly ever. Like I can't even think of a time when I thought that recently, at least.
All right, man. Last question. What's one tip you would give new breeders or people looking to get into the hobby?
Patience. Harkens back to the first of this podcast. Patience, man. You know, do your research, educate yourself, surround yourself by good people. You know, don't assume just because someone's been doing it a long time that they're always right. You know, it's just like science. Science is always right until they prove it wrong, right? Right. And so, you know, if what works for me might not work for you, but don't necessarily abolish the idea that what I'm trying to tell you to do might be a better way. You know, give it a shot. You might kick me another idea. We put the two ideas together. Boom, we're both better off. You know, like that's what it's supposed to be. Is camaraderie, work together, cooperative. You know, it's definitely dot your I's, cross your T's before you want to do it. Be prepared to have babies and take care of the babies because again, they're live animals. You know, and that's a couple pieces of advice. I mean, I got a lot of advice I could give people, but if I had to do like a quick one, it's patience and education. Honestly.
Awesome, man. So, dude, that kind of covers all the items that I wanted to talk to you about today. So do you have any shout outs? Anybody you want to say hi to real quick?
Oh, let me think. Well, let's give a shout out to Jesse for sure over at Freedom Breeder. He always takes care of me. I try and reciprocate it. Great dude, best racks out there, in my opinion. Great guy. Who else? Give a shout out to my wife for sure. She's my better half, definitely better looking too, for sure. I mean, really, anyone who's on board with Team No Sleep. I mean, shout out to the people that burn that midnight candle for their family, work hard for their animals and their dreams. I mean, it doesn't come easy, but nothing good ever does. And so, put in the time. Like you might get kicked and feel like you're down, but it all comes back around. You get out what you put in. So yeah, shout out to anyone who's Team No Sleep, and I mean true Team No Sleep. Bust your ass. There's no replacement for hard work. So if you want it, just chase it.
Amen on that, dude. So tell the people where they can find you, when they can see some of your animals, and where they could look to purchase some stuff from you.
I don't really have too much out there as far as like where they can go. I mean, really just Facebook. If you look up Boa Addicts, it's like www.facebook.com/boaaddicts/Boa Addicts. I do post on there quite a bit when I'm not banned for trolling people. Also on Instagram, if you look up Boa Addicts on Instagram, most people sales-wise actually just hit me up in private and they say, hey, I'm looking for this, or what do you got that fits in this? My next comment is, or response will be, well, what's your budget? Because, I mean, people do know that I kind of cater to the higher-end stuff, but, I do have ranges of stuff for most people. If they want something, we find out what their budget is and show them a multitude of animals, see what they like. I currently have about 80 on block. So, if people want VPI stuff, I'm probably one of the go-tos at this point. Best project out there, in my opinion. So, yeah, it's about that.
Awesome, man. So can you hang out with us for a little bit longer? We're going to talk about the VPI morph. All right, brother? All right, guys, welcome back. So I appreciate all you guys getting back on here. So I want to talk about a little bit about the VPI gene. So right now, for the most part, the VPI gene is one of the most popular genes that are currently out there. And I know Thomas has got that pretty deep through his collection, as do I. But I know a lot of people have been concerned with the frequency of the VPI gene among collections. Will that mean that the gene price will eventually go down? Will it mean that the gene is played out? So we want to really examine the gene and see, what the future potential is and kind of some of the background. So, Thomas, you want to kind of talk a little bit about how you got involved in VPI?
Yeah. So back in, 2012, I ended up grabbing on a cash plus trade deal with Tim Koffenhofer, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Right. Widow Peak 09 male, produced by Tracy. And that animal's still kicking today. He's going to be almost 12 years old, I think. Still in a collection actually over at Dia Marie's place right now. I grabbed that in 09, bred that to a Rothenbach Aztec, and made my first Aztec het VPIs in 2013. So, I mean, it was my second litter actually that I've ever had was Aztec het VPIs, and back in 2013 that was pretty baller. Like it was an immediate goal of mine to go towards that VPI stuff, and I do have granddaughters of that litter now, which is pretty cool. It's pretty deep in the collection itself from that original animal, which I think is epic. And let's throw it back to Midas. King Midas was his name, or is his name actually, because he's still around. One of the most beautiful Widow Peak gold clean VPIs I've ever seen. Honestly, I wish I never got rid of him. For what he was and for the lineage and the history on that snake, man, he's dads to hundreds at this point. Like it's pretty cool. But yeah, VPI, man, it's one of my fortes by far. It's probably my favorite recessive morph, and one that I probably have more of in my collection than anything.
So give us a couple of highlights of kind of what you're doing with it currently, what you've done in the past, maybe some of the animals that you've produced that you're pretty proud of, and kind of what you feel is the future of this gene.
Gotcha. Okay. So, like we had talked previously, I purchased Anthony's collection in 2013, and he was notorious for having some of the absolute best VPIs at the time. The vast majority he had gotten from Tracy, and this is back when Pink Panther was legit Pink Panther.
Right.
And, he also was the founder of Red Rum lineage. And so he had produced some Red Rum head VPIs in 2011. The Red Rum matriarch came from Pacific Coast, which was just a very abnormally red imperator import boa, and he bred a Pink Panther VPI to her and produced the Red Rum head VPIs. And then in 2013, he bred one of the males from that, known as Hot Sauce, infamous, very famous snake in the VPI game, to a Pink Panther VPI. Visual female from Tracy, and she had Petco, which is, my 2013 Red Rum VPI OG queen bee, man. Never even bred her. I've never found a male that I wanted to put her to. I thought would justify me, risking her. And so I have the oldest and especially at the time the nicest Red Rum VPI sitting in a cage, getting fed and just happy as a fat clam. I started to really hit into the color base. Red Rum is my strict combination for color that I use, polygenic, as we kind of described the small lineage associated with that. I hit Red Rum VPI Jungle Sunglows or Junglos in 2015, and from those animals I'm finally breeding the females now, 5 years old, and their brother, who I have raised, he's produced now 2 litters for me and hopefully another 1 or 2 this year. I hit the Red Rum Hypojungles double het blood VPI, and all the combinations within. And then I did a blood that I produced in 2013, actually. My mom's boa. I gave it to her in 2013, so it's her snake. I bred the Red Rum Junglo to her and produced those hets. And then, I'm desperately trying to get the VPI Snow version of that so I can kind of see these are all pet projects. These are things I want to see. This isn't like necessarily public consumption, but I want to see how that red is playing into the VPI Snows. Why are we seeing really yellow VPI Snows? Why are we seeing really white VPI Snows? And I have both combinations, right? But I want to know why. Like, what traits of these animals is causing that hereditary color change, right, between the animals, between littermates, one white, one really yellow? Is it because the really yellow one is technically really more red, or is the white one really more red? I don't know. So it's kind of a pet project. I want to do the Red Rum T Snows. I might hit that this year, which would be pretty epic. And then VPI Snow game, man. It's probably outside of the color game. VPI Snow is my thing. I don't know of probably pretty much anyone that has the capability with the VPI Snow stuff that I do, and that's specifically because it's probably my favorite combination to work with. The type 1 anery and VPI put together. So
yeah, no, 100%. So let me ask you: do you feel like the VPI gene is becoming oversaturated in collections at the moment?
No, I mean that's like saying like, and see, this is coming just from experience over time, and obviously catering to like the high end stuff. That would be like saying like, is call strain albinism oversaturated? Well, no, there's always a market for it, right? It's like our car is oversaturated. Now, if you had 5 million Veyrons at $2.4 million a piece, might be oversaturated, right? But you don't, because they're very unique, they're very connoisseur, they're very rare in that quality range. You have 5 million Civics, yeah. So there's a range, right, from like low end, just pet store grade, all the way up to the super high end, best of the best stuff. And so in that, you find a market of buyers who have a specific budget. And this isn't someone, again, people always think I'm an elitist. This isn't me talking down to anybody. You have the people that can afford a certain level of animal. That's great. If that's the animal that makes them happy, cool. I personally would save a little more and get something a little different. Maybe. Who knows? Everyone's an individual and get what you like. But, I mean, as far as saturation, the key to avoid a saturation and then thus like a demonetization of their value is quality. up
Right.
your quality. If you up the quality, quality always sells. I mean, I've seen regular VPI animals, just regular VPI, sell for $350, and I can still get $5,000 for a red rump.
Right.
So,
Absolutely.
but lineage, quality, history, level of care, and what I always tell people too, like don't even take into consideration in just its isolatory factor of like best quality deserves best price. Remember, you're buying the breeder too. So
Right.
you can get, I mean, you might pay a little bit more money with me, but you know I'm going to back you up 100%, right? And I have the ability to do it. That's one of the big differences, because people sometimes will ask me, well, why do you charge more for your animals? And I'm like, well, I mean, because something were to go wrong, if the quality animal isn't up to the par, I got you. I'll take care of you. You know, and whereas you might kick someone some money and it could have been a better deal, but if that animal has a problem, or if that animal, you know, you get it and you're not satisfied with it and you hit them up, you're like, well, I want my money back. Well, tough. You know, and there's only ever been one time when I've had someone return a snake, and you know, I this dude's out of the hobby now and he's a total douche nugget. So, you know, it was actually a good situation, but it had nothing to do with the animal, everything to do with the person, you know.
No,
And
that's
you know,
completely understandable. Yeah.
outside of that, you know, it's always been kosher. But yeah, you know, I mean, quality reigns supreme always, day in, day out. And you know, the fortunate reality is the further we get in the genetics and the more quantity is produced, people are able to continue to get higher quality animals, because just like any market, right, it's a supply and demand issue. They can get these higher quality animals for a lower value and then start to plug them into their projects, and instead of polishing the turd, they're increasing the quality of their animals. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%, dude. And plus, I don't think everything's been done with the VPI gene. I think, like, every year it seems like we're discovering new combinations. Like, for example, have you had a chance to see that habanero that was
Oh
produced
yeah,
earlier this
yeah,
year?
from Tim over in Germany. Yeah,
Yeah, Tim in Germany,
phenomenal.
mixing the VPI, a VPI Sunglow into the leopard. Who knew that it was going to produce that level of pinks and, kind of those oranges with it? And it's
Yeah,
essentially like an
absolutely.
animal that we've never seen before. And we really don't know, as you were saying, how the VPI gene is going to react, for example, with the pied, when the pied becomes more readily available throughout, the hobby. So
Hmm.
I think there's definitely a lot of potential with it. Now,
Oh yeah, 100% for sure.
now what?
Well, and then you know, just I'm a gene stacker. I
Right.
love just mass combinations of stuff, and not to the point of ball pythons where you don't know what you have, but yeah, I mean, like when you mix a VPI snow with Aztec, you get a unique look. But then you throw jungle in there, and it changes the color completely.
Oh yeah,
You know,
it changes it, you know, into
yeah, yeah,
almost a completely different animal.
significantly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally different. Because I have litter mates where one is like a VPI snow glow Aztec, and I'll compare it to like the Snow Glow Aztec Jungle, and they're completely, totally polar opposite. It's just that one single genetic that changed it so drastically. And then when you're looking at like the new combinations with like the leopard and then the blood, you know,
Right.
Randy and Shane hit the first VPI blood they called the Ametrine. I believe 2018 they hit that, and I got a male out of that litter. Yeah, and you know several have been produced since then. Um, but you know the combination on that, what we're seeing now is phenomenal combinations. But now imagine throwing Anery in there. Who the hell knows?
Right.
Throwing Jungle in there on top of that, or Aztec on top of that. Who knows? I mean, we'll find out in the next 5 years. You
No,
know, so
absolutely, man.
and that's why you know I feel like the hobby is just going to get better, because you know the amount of combinations that we have the ability to do is just increasing exponentially.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, man. And I think I was having a conversation with another breeder a couple of days ago, and he was basically asking me, what are some of the opportunities left with this gene? Why should people continue to invest in it? And I think, as you're saying, obviously there's the quality aspect. There's the fact that we don't know what the gene is doing, with all the morphs that are currently out there and with all the various, polygenic lines. But also, there's nothing wrong with when some of the prices drop a little bit and then you start attracting new people into the hobby. I remember the first time I saw the VPI gene, and I think it was in Vin Russo's book, right? And it was demonstrating one of the VPI snakes that the Barkers had at the time, dude. That blew me away, man. And like, I know my first couple years in the hobby, And this is like back in the late 90s, mind you. I was, that was the snake that I was chasing, the one that I was hoping at producing. I was lucky enough that in 2010, I was able to get 2 pairs of hypos that were het, and I was able to produce some VPI jungles. Like, I think I was one of the first few guys to produce a VPI super jungle. But yeah, man, I think that we're only really scratching the surface of what this gene's potential is.
I agree 100%. It really just comes down to what individual look you want and what combinations you like. And, a lot of this stuff, I don't think people had that level of expectation of that, what Tim has coined the habanero now. Because we've seen VPI leopard, and while they were cool, they weren't like exponentially cool. But
Right.
then all of a sudden he threw hypo into it, and then it's like, holy shit.
Yeah, and then it was a
Totally different animal. And so the thing is
God, could you imagine red rum into that, dude?
Well, so that's why I did the red rum jungalo times the blood.
Right.
And so, I'm attempting to pull in the red rum color into the ametrine line, and jungle on top of that. And so that's one thing too, is, taking your time. Like, I could take many of my VPI animals and just produce more VPIs.
Right.
But I'm producing it. Yeah, like even Tony hit me up, Anthony, who founded Red Rum. He hit me up like a year and a half ago. He's like, dude, why do you keep making hets? He's like, just start making red rums, because he wants to get one back, actually.
Right.
Like it's his line. He's paying homage to him. And I was like, well, I mean, I have all of these plans of like, I want to make this, and this, and I want to do it like on one-off stuff that no one can do. So then when I did the blood that I produced in 13 to the red rum VPI jungler that I produced in 15, I make my hets. And coincidentally, that was the first pairing that I ever paired where I produced both parents. And so I was like, I mean, what heavier hitting litter could I do for the future than something like that, infusing that red rum into there? Now, I'll throw a curveball your way. What if I put Anery and Leopard into that too?
Whoo! Yeah, dude, I'm guessing you're going to make a purple snake that way, man.
Well, but see, I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean,
we don't know. That's the fun in it, right? We don't know till it's born.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it'll look like dog shit. I don't know.
Yeah.
But see, that's the thing is kind of make your own path. Like
right.
have a set goal and say, this is what I want to do. Like don't chase that short term come up of like, okay, well, I'm going to just breed this just so I can sell the babies. Like, what do you want to make as a keeper and a breeder? What do you want to produce? And so to me, I want to see a red rum, VPI, jungle snow globe, leopard. I forgot leopard, but that's what I want to see. So right. I'm going to make the hets to do it. And then if I'm, by God's grace, is lucky enough, because I mean, odds wise on that, going from like a het to a het, that's really pushing the envelope on
right.
odds, right? But if the odds hit, I might be able to see it. And like I said, it's like 4 or 5 years out. But I'll make it happen. And fortunately, I've had an inordinate amount of success with my red rum stuff. I've sold almost none of it, so I've raised it all for years. I produced my first red rums in 15, and I produce multiple litters a year. I keep everything. What that'll allow me to do is increase quality on quality. I do outcross pairings, so then I can breed back, have stronger outcross-based genetics, for reduce the inbreeding, but then I can also select the heritable traits. Because one thing you see in these polygenics is you'll see these animals that are super nice. They don't make like the best babies. Right. I want to pick like the lineage of animals within a litter that consistently produce the best babies every time, and then put those back best babies to best babies. And then all of a sudden, hopefully what I'll see is even better than parents. And so, I mean, VPI is just barely hitting the surface, dude. I mean, VPI snows are still super rare overall, and especially among like mass majority collections. And so, plugging in a bunch of codoms and more recessives into those, I don't know of a better thing I could do. I mean, imagine a VPI snow glow Aztec blood. That's another project I'm working on. So, snow glow Aztec times blood, make the hets, and breed the hets down the road. And I mean, fortunately, since I have a VPI snow glow male from 18, he's a big boy. I can outcross him to multiple different animals, or because of my VPI snow stock, I can take like a jungle motley blood and breed that to a VPI snow glow. So then you have jungle motley Aztec blood VPI snows and snow glows. And why not, right?
Yeah, why not, man? That's insane.
So I mean that's kind of my goal is I'm gonna throw the book at it, dude, everything I can and see what I can make. And first and foremost, it's all for me. Keep the best, sell the rest. That's kind of my philosophy. Well, I just kind of keep everything, but
I'm with you, dude. Honestly, I think one of the most difficult parts of the hobby for me, dude, is letting go of animals. Like,
absolutely.
Like just today, I have a couple animals up on Morph Market, and I got hit up about selling one of them, and I just felt this dread. I was like, I really want to keep this animal.
Yeah. And you do.
It's like you got to pry it out of me, dude.
Yeah, well, of course, and so as a seller, I mean that maybe that's another like pro tip for people just coming in. Like, if you don't want to sell something, like if you're not committed to selling it, but you're kind of like 50-50, right? You post it up and you put like an obscene price on it. If someone wants to pay it, let them pay it, right? Like your obscene price is like, okay, well, I can't refuse it. So you put your obscene price on it, and if they want to pay it, then you're good. But more often than not, it'll hit that 2-year mark, and you're like, all right, hold back,
right?
And then you raise it, and you didn't really want to sell it anyway. So don't ever do something.
Oh, the struggle is real, man. The struggle is real, and for me, and the funny thing is, it's just a ball python. But I've been trying to hit this particular combo for about 3 years.
Yeah,
and I finally hit it this year. So now I'm like, oh man, it pains me.
It's pet project, it was like a goal. And one thing I find with a lot of keepers is like once they hit that goal snake, it's not like, okay, well, I hit a goal, I'm going to move on. It's like, no, now I want to
now it evolves.
Yeah, and then it evolves into like, okay, what else can I do? But then if you sell the animal that was your goal, might be a detriment to your future goal, because then you don't have that animal. And so it's a perpetual cycle of like, should I, and then you're like, I shouldn't, but then at this point, I mean,
and then my wife yells at me. She's like, "Just sell the damn snake."
Well, of course, because it's easy as an outsider looking in. They don't see the inner workings of our brains. But I'm fortunate enough now where I've built the collection to where I'm completely self-contained. Like I don't need to outsource anything. I haven't even bought a boa in 2 years outside of Kyle.
Right.
Kyle's the only one, and at this point, there's a couple things I want, but I don't need. And so I was like, okay, well, I'll just make my own. Like I want a sun dragon because I have the Fire Jungle Motleys, 50% blood call that I produced in 18 that I need sun dragons for, so that I can prove out either the blood or the call or both. And if not, then they're 100% heads, right?
Right.
So and that's a pet project I'm trying. Is I want to hit a leucistic that looks like a calico DRMB. It's that white snake that looks like blood is splattered all over it, because these leucistics, many of them have the speckling, right?
Right.
So if I can get that in a red dragon or a sun dragon form to where those spots are bright red, I have a stark white snake with bright red spots.
Dude, that would look like a giant palmetto corn snake.
Exactly. That's the exact look I'm going for. But imagine because this fire lineage is super, super Colombian heavy, like. Right. Big genetics on this Colombian side. Imagine that at 7 feet.
Oh, absolutely, man. And then imagine throwing VPI in there, so where the spots, it's like some blood splattered with a couple of other colors.
With like yellow and I mean, dude, but see, that's the beauty of it, right? Is you can do so many combinations that have never even been done, and I don't even know if anyone's even thought of that. Like, I've told a couple people of the idea, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that sounds like that's possible." I'm like, "Well, yeah, I wouldn't be doing it if I didn't think it was." But I mean, maybe it doesn't pan out, and I get a leucistic with bright red eyes, which I've already had. I had the first sharp leucistic that Chase Baker made. Super cool. It's a white boa with bright red eyes. Still epic, but we won't know until I do it, and so I figure, oh shit, I'll try. Might as well. It doesn't hurt anything,
Well, dude, man, I hope you make it, dude, because I'm looking forward to seeing that and then trying to figure out a way to justify buying it.
Yeah, I'm about 3.5 years from being able to give a test run, at least on females. And I mean, I don't buy adults anymore.
Right.
I would have to get a sun dragon male and then breed it to the females I produced in 18. And I try my absolute damnedest to not breed anything before 4.5 years old at this point, unless I have a young one like 3.5 cycling. They'll never. I mean, I got Petco's 7 years old this year, and she's never even been bred, and she's a red rum VPI. I'm not in a hurry. Team No Rush. That's my other moniker. Team No Sleep and Team No Rush. Like, don't rush it, man. There's so much cool shit to still chase and so many things to do. There's no reason to hurry.
100%, man. Well, dude, it sounds like there's still so much to be done with VPI. I think it's a giant opportunity for all those out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right,
people shouldn't scoff at the opportunity. I mean, really, there's so many combinations that have yet to be seen. It's so infant. I mean, call albino. I should know the history on it, honestly, because I've been around long enough. But I mean, those were in the early '90s. Call albinos, and look at the stuff people are making now. Like just a straight sun glow albino that has like insanely colored sides and bright red heads. And I mean, we look at the transition from these original call albinos that Pete Call bred at like 18 to 20 months old, and they were siblings, and he bred them together. And for some god who knows reason, they actually produced at like 18 or 20 months old. And this is what I've been told, so it's a kind of little grapevine. I mean, of course, if someone wants to correct me on that, they can. But, we see that transition of these original call to what we see now, and it's just such a world of difference. And so there's a lot to do on all the morphs. There's so much cool stuff. I mean, boas are the best by far. That's why I keep 400 of them.
Amen to that. All right, man. Well, shoot, appreciate your insight. With that, we'll go ahead and wrap this thing up.
For sure.
Wow, guys, that was a great episode. Tom really dropped some major knowledge on us today. Join us next time when we speak to Sergio Hernandez and chat about the Labyrinth Project. Thanks for joining us, guys. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Do us a favor, if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe on iTunes and Spotify. Until next time, grow 'em slow.